Okay, the game is Martyr Bloody Theater 1528. This was, I was contacted about this to do a review copy. It's been around for a while, I guess. I don't know. The designer has put a couple of videos up, including a description of the rules that is far, far better than the actual rule book, unfortunately. And at least from what I can tell, I watched it because I was so fucking lost. I read the rule book, couldn't understand what's going on, and tried setting it up to fiddle around with it. Working through the rules, still couldn't get what's going on. I was going to play a little bit of it before I started, but you know what? I can tell right off I am going to hate this so much that I want to spend as little time as possible on it. Like I said, I was contacted. I think the designer already watches my videos. Sent a couple of nice handwritten notes. But this is, I looked at it and I'm like, ooh, I'm interested in the topic, and somebody who knows my stuff probably isn't going, even though it looks kind of maybe Euro-ish, somebody who's interested in my videos, who watches them, probably knows whether or not, something is going to appeal to me under those type of circumstances. Well, I was dead wrong in that assumption. The concept behind this is enthralling to me. It's, the idea of it is your martyrs who are, your potential martyrs or eventual martyrs during the period probably preceding the real Protestant Revolution. Let me see. Well, 1528 is definitely within the Reformation period. So yeah, so this isn't just Hussites and whatnot. But anyway, the effect of it is that you're supposed to be some sort of martyrs, and you're defending your view of the faith somehow or another. It's also unconnected that it's almost impossible for me to give a better explanation to that. The actual goal of the game is to gather points by collecting up little things and working within an obfuscated fucking system. A very obfuscated system, which is made worse by a rule book that's almost incomprehensible for a number of reasons. Start off with, let's talk about what the different things that you're looking at are. So, each player has some stuff. They have a set of these breath cubes, which are going to be your action points throughout the game. You use them to do various things. Okay. You have a single article of faith. This is going to determine on the four major components of the game, in terms of the vectors of disagreement or whatever, where you stand on a given faith. And you can either be standing sort of in favor of the church or opposed to it, but the church being the Catholic Church. The strange thing is, this isn't one track that mixes between in favor and opposed. So it's not like you're influencing public opinion one way or the other. You're influencing some of the public opinion and engaging people towards whichever side of the faith, whichever side of that article that you're on. So here, I'd be taking an anti-church view in 3 of the articles of faith and a pro-church in 1. But the pro-church doesn't mean that, I have to sway people against the anti-church version. It just means I have to make my case, for the people who will listen to that case. I also start off with, and everybody has the same set, 4 of these intention cards, which are going to declare which part of the faith that I'm going to be, advocating for or against at on that particular turn. What else do we have? Well, we have these markers. Now, some of these match the different articles of faith in terms of an image. The images are rather abstracted to me. They don't really align much with anything. You just, get the symbols right and whatever. Did I mention the goal of this game is to collect up points through an obfuscated system? I think so, but I just want to highlight that because that is the key. It's a fucking modern Euro, which I got to stop doing review copies. Period. I've got too many games as it is, except in the few cases where I'm like, well, yeah, the one that I didn't get. I really actually would have been very interested in. And the one I asked for, I was interested in. Okay. By the way, it's like a Saturday. This is very odd. I woke up too late to go dancing on Friday, for those who care. All right, let's continue on. So most of these are symbols that match those thingies. There's these other things which are spectators, and they're set up kind of at random. Half the board is going to be squares, and half the board doesn't have squares, and they're randomized within that. And that's going to create a sort of topography for being able to capture these things, whatever the hell they represent. You have these, which are a part of your scoring mechanism. You want to match these with these and with this and get it all combined, and you have to meet all kind of requirements to get any points at all in anything. Again, massive, massive levels of obfuscation. This just indicates the current turn order, and this indicates the current player. This thing's the spirit token. It's going to move around the board, allowing you to collect stuff under various complicated and obnoxious mechanisms. I mean, the whole goal of the game seems to be how to figure out how to even fucking play it, is really the answer that I can see. So, yeah, it makes perfect sense to start without any goddamn clue at all and see how whether or not you enjoy a game where the major component is trying to figure out how to even do anything and whether doing anything's worth it and whatnot. And that can be an interesting process in a simple game, like what I just played, the Strange New Worlds. I feel like the choices of the valuations there on that really, really simple set of rules is just so brilliant, So I'm not opposed to that kind of, hey, should I be expending resources on this or not? I'm totally in favor of that, but give me a really, really, really simple design for me to do that in. Sometimes the design can be obnoxious to me, but still incredibly, it can be brilliant. Consider Bizarre, which I think was a Sid Sackson game, which has this brilliant concept that's fairly simple, but, it forces you into kinds of thought of that nature, but to a degree that's just too heavy for me. Anyway, we keep going. And we're going to be so plucked full of commentary in this because I am so damn unhappy that I agreed to do this. Okay, over here you have a prayer region. What this does is you expend little white cubes to put little other colored cubes on little tracks. That really is what it is. Anything beyond that, it's just thematic dressing. Now, here's something that I do find kind of interesting and intriguing in this game. These two hymn cards, and these are going to get replaced every turn. The goal here is you can expend breath cubes to try to move this forward, or to move it forward. But your goal is going to be to match the breath, to match the lowest value that's been selected. Each time you put one, you put it on the top most available one. The lowest valued one is the one that off that card can actually be claimed. So you're going to put an intention card down, and if you can match your intention card, it's going to be revealed so everybody knows what you have. It's they're simultaneously revealed. If you're able to match yours as the last one chosen, you get a bonus. If you're not, well, you fucked up and you shouldn't have done anything on that card because it did you no good to play on there. Somebody else took advantage of it. That's going to create, I think, some really, really interesting type of play. However, I honestly think that it's going to make people just avoid playing on there for a while. We'll see what goes on with that. Then there's these guys, which have a few different, which have multiple functionalities. In order to take one of these, what you're going to do is you're going to rearrange the play order as described on them. Costs you 2 of your little breath cubes, they're called, these action items, to take one. And then it will allow you to perhaps get a spectator on your neck during a certain later phase in the game. Then there's this, which I couldn't quite get from the understandings, but it's gonna allow you to move more quickly across empty spaces on the board. And again, you play breath cubes to trigger that. We'll look at it in the rules. I watched in the video and I didn't completely get it, but honestly, I am so fucking frustrated at this point that I really don't give a shit. Okay. So, have we discussed everything that's a component? I think so. The rulebook itself, like I said, it's a mess. Among other things, the font even sort of, I mean, it's not horribly painful, but there's so much bolding here and whatnot that I find it kind of distracting. You've got this massive color skew and everything's explained with pictures and so much dark print and everything that distracts from any ability to read it. In addition, it's written like a modern Euro would be, which is to say it doesn't really tell you anything about, the narrative of what you're actually doing or anything. And that makes sense because there isn't one. The game is all about go do these procedural things to get points. That's all it's about, which pisses me off because, to some extent, I looked at this as a topic I was interested in exploring to see what would result from that. In the kind of way I was thinking of things like, I don't know, Christians and the Lions. I don't remember who did that originally, but it was, a 70s era game, late 70s, that, you pray to see if God will strike lions dead, and otherwise they just eat you. Yeah, But no, this has no such fun factor and no such story factor. All it's about, again, is accumulating for the points. Okay, so here we get to, there's an introduction to it, which doesn't really tell you much that links to the game. It tells you a little bit about who you are in the game, that you're being burned at the stake or something, but it's not even, I mean, here, by giving the performance of your life as your final act in the public square, you can influence the audience towards your allegiance. Okay, so that's your goal. That's the setting. That is the thematic overlay that lives on this otherwise abstract game. Okay. So your goal is to score points for doctrines. You're only going to be allowed to score on 3 of the 4 doctrines, and that's because of these cubes. When you play these things for prayer, you get to place one of your little prayer cubes on one of the doctrine spaces and on one of the points for one of the doctrine spaces. Again, there are some interesting mechanisms here because the further to the right or the further higher up in value you place something, the harder it is to get it there, and you have to kind of cooperatively do it with other players. But if you reach your goal, you get lots and lots of points for everything you reach. So kind of like this, there's this, the hymn cards, there's this sort of Yeah, we're all working together in a direction, but some of us don't want to go as far as others, which again leads to this sort of reluctance to play anything in it if you've chosen low, and maybe inability to reach the high points if you've chosen high. I think it provides some interesting player dynamics in terms of how you can generate, maybe a realm for negotiation, although that's not specifically allowed or disallowed in the game, or something along those lines. Now, I know some people don't play with table talk, in which case, if this is just a sort of no talking, no cutting deals within the game type of thing, I don't know how the fuck that's going to work. You're kind of symbolizing, yeah, I'm really interested in this. Well, then you're going to do the work, buddy. But I'm willing to ride along and maybe give you one, or something along those lines. Likewise, the earlier that you choose a doctrine that you want to score points for by getting one of these, the more points you get. So that there might be a bonus towards being able to play one of these to get high points and a lower value here to kind of offer a deal. Anyway, let me swap batteries. If you want to learn the game, this is not the place to learn it. Go to the designer's videos. And being for that, I don't have the will to face these rules terribly. So I have not internalized them. I haven't played the game at all. I wanted to give it a shot, but when I decided instead, because I couldn't figure out enough to play even, a solo game off camera, to go watch the video, well, that became the expense rather than trying to play it alone. Okay. So for each doctrine you want to score, you have to get 3 things. The doctrine tile from the board. Okay, we have to look to see where that's listed. Doctrine tiles are the little squares that you pick up here. Okay, you have to have at least one of these, and the more that you claim, the more times I think you score from here. We'll see when we get to scoring, but allegiance tile. You claim one and only one of the doctrine's allegiance tile. That's these. They give you a base value if you're able to get in any of those counters for it. I think. The allegiance level. The support or condemn tracker must be past the level of your prayer cube. So when you play one of these, and you can choose where you want to play it, say you put it up here, well, if this thing only makes it to here, you get nothing. Good day, sir. Okay. Now, as I said, the support and condemn are not opposite sides of a single track. So convincing some people to support and some to condemn is, you're not winning over the crowd as a whole. You're just managing to convince some people that are leaning towards your direction or whatever, I guess. For whatever it matters. If you don't get all those requirements for a doctrine, you won't score any points for it. Icons next to each phase and each action in the rule book indicate which requirement it accepts. Your breath cubes allow you to do shit. Yeah. Then there's a setup. Now, the biggest thing in the setup is most of this is fixed. Obviously, the cards are drawn at random from the deck. Your articles of faith, each person gets one and the rest are put aside. So nobody knows what your articles of faith are. However, they're going to become pretty obvious. I don't feel like their hidden value looks like it's going to mean much because you're going to be claiming stuff and declaring your intentions probably pretty early. Everybody's got each one of them, so everybody wants to collect their various doctrines. Of course, you're only interested in 3 of the 4 because you only have 3 prayer cubes, so you can only get 3. You can only play in 3 of them. Okay. Now, when I first started looking at it and playing, without reading, I read through the rules, didn't understand a damn thing, but I started working through them to set up and figure out what I'm doing on a turn. I did get a little bit into that, but not very far. what I was thinking was, well, maybe, supporting the church doctrines would mean something, would help you in some way. No, you're already condemned, man. And, the only goal is to get people, to get more people to view things the way your particular branch of heresy wants to. There's a lot of these little, I hate this kind of arrangement, but it tells you everything. I didn't talk about all of this. So this is the player order. This moves around along the top to indicate which player is currently going. This indicates the player has not passed. Once they drop down to here, they have passed. Apparently these two here are an indication that the fourth player in a four-player game is able to pick 2 intention cards, which gives them a little bit more capability, well, significantly more, to actually obtain one of these things, for whatever that's worth. All right. We've got a glossary of terms. These are not all the things that are bolded throughout the game. The rules have other things bolded and make you think that you'd be looking them up in there. Nah, it's just there to make it look like somebody was handwriting something with a pen, with an ink pen, and didn't know how to apply consistent pressure and keep their ink at the same level throughout. Okay, so the game is going to be split into a number of different, each turn is split into a number of different phases. First is the intention phase, when you declare what you're going to be doing, essentially, what you're going to be aiming for that particular turn. Then there's the perform phase, where you engage in spending your breath cubes to play with these things. And I think you do this one too, but I don't know. Again, that one, I didn't even really see it until the end of the, until towards the end of the video. And I think maybe you play this in the next phase instead. But in the perform phase, you're going to be choosing between doing prayers, trying to push the hymn forward, and grabbing some of these. And you're limited to all of these actions, We'll get to that in a moment. The response phase is going to be when you're playing around on this board for the most part. Yeah, the hasten the spirit happens during that. I think each player gets 1 turn to do all their stuff, but again, I'm not absolutely certain. I'll have to see how the rules are worded. That's what I got from the video. Then the inhale and endure phase, well, this is basically a reset for the next turn. And what's going to happen is, if not enough praying's going on, some of the cubes that are assigned already on the board, some of them might have come back to you already, and you may not have spent them all. Might get removed from the game completely, and at the end of the game will end when, after those are assigned out, and again, this is from the video, I couldn't get this from the rules. It may be there. Yeah, it is there. There was another indication that confused me. There's been a number of places where, like, this very procedural rule set has, convinced me something else is going on. Maybe because I can't read very well, especially when so distracted with so much shit in the rule book. Bold text blurting out, colors all over the place. Man. The game ends when somebody at the end of the inhale and endure phase, after those cubes have been handed out, has no cubes. So basically, once everybody's kind of choking their life out, once somebody actually dies, that's it. Okay. And that means that everybody gets to play somewhat in every turn in the game. But there's no reason to sort of save your cubes up or make sure that you have more, in the sense of, like, being able to last longer and convince people longer. No, as soon as one person dies, y'all give up the ghost. It might be worth it to be better than the worst person, though. Okay, at the end of the game, then you're going to be scoring, if you have that set, a doctrine tile, an allegiance tile, and the value as high as your prayer cube. If you don't get all three, you get no points for it. And you'll multiply the number of doctrine tiles times the points that you've assigned your prayer at. You get your allegiance tile added to that. And you lose 10 points for any spectator tiles that you've picked up. Now, I haven't really talked too much about spectator tiles. They have a couple of different uses, which we'll talk about. But if you choose not to use them and the game ends, they're worth negative 10 points each, which sucks. Okay. So, into more detail. On the perform phase, you must have prayer cubes matching your player color in the prayer section, i.e. you haven't used them all up yet. You place a breath cube in the leftmost unoccupied luminary space next to the doctrine. So you choose a doctrine to work on, and you put a breath cube next to it. Place a prayer cube matching your player color on that doctrine's allegiance track, selecting an unoccupied space on the side based on whether you support or condemn, which will be in your articles of faith, really. And then you claim the topmost allegiance tile. So the first person to play in something gets a bonus. However, if they go, you know, hey, I want that 10 and I put this up to 9, well, maybe everybody else avoids that because they don't want to help them. That person's going to have to work very hard to score 9 points per thing. Of course, if they're able to get 4 of the doctrines, then the 9 will score, and they'll have a huge, huge quantity of points. However, that seems very, very unlikely. And for us to assess this, we do a quick count of what a doctrine has. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm guessing 8. I'm not seeing 8. Maybe there's 7 of each. Let's see what it says here. There are 28, so yeah, 7 of each. You know, and you're going to have to maneuver around the terrain of the board, which means unless they're clustered really close together, you're probably not going to be able to force 4 of them out. We'll see how that works. I don't know how that's going to play out at all, but we will see. Okay, so that's what prayer does. You're able to, you know, select one of your, you're able to move one of your prayer cubes up there. Now, I don't think there's a limit to how many times you can do this in a particular round. Hymn. You can use 1 breath cube per turn on the hymn. How do you remember that you played on the hymn? Yeah, I don't know. I guess you just have to remember. But you'll place a breath cube in a luminary space on the topmost space on one of the 2 breath one of the 2 hymnal cards. And again, your goal is to reach your particular level. Now, if your particular level is the lowest on the card, yeah, you might as well play. But maybe you didn't think that you would reach that low. And again, experience of the game is probably the only way you'll know how far you can get there, as well as experience with the players and what their sort of psychology is. I think that's going to impact a lot of the choices in this game, is being able to read the players. Okay. If you have a spectator tile in your player area, you may place it on an unoccupied luminary space instead of using a breath cube. No more than 1 spectator tile, though, can be played on a hymn card per round. I don't know what that means. I can interpret that several different ways. I'm assuming across all players no more than 1 can be placed, but on a hymn card leads me to think that you can put a spectator on each hymn card. And you're only allowed to play 1 breath cube per turn, but I think you can play spectators in addition. So reading it by the explicit write-up that it gives, I think 1 player could actually end up playing a breath and 2 spectators on a card. Now, with the way that I leave the game, etc., I don't know how likely it is that I'm going to be able to remember whether or not somebody played a breath cube on a hymnal card. Just don't know. You know, and you would have this same situation in a post play. If somebody forgot that rule or wasn't really paying attention, they might place a second one, and everyone else might not notice because they're not really, you know, paying that much attention to what other people's requirements are. Probably players who really know what they're doing and know the rules will avoid breaking them, but the group as a whole may not be able to prevent somebody from making an error. And so I would expect me to make that error several times during the play. Okay, the sermon, your goal is to adjust the turn order. I don't think that's too important. The big thing is the ability to gain a spectator tile. You can perform this action. You use 2 breath cubes, so it's expensive. And only if you do not have a spectator tile on one of your face-down intention cards, and the action can be fully completed. But I think you could have a spectator kicking around in your hand. You just haven't placed it on an intention card yet. Okay. Now, the action being fully completed means that you can do whatever's required by the card and all its sort of implications. So if it says move back 1 stake and I'm blue, I would shift here to here, and you know, that would be fine, but if I was here, I couldn't. Move someone else back a stake, well, I could always do that, I think. Move forward a stake, again, the first player can't do that. Well, the player in the leftmost space. If your avatar changes stakes, move the turn marker with it to the top stake your avatar now occupies. So wherever you go as the current player, you still remain the current player. You've just shaken up everybody else's turn order. The last of the things you can do in the perform phase is pass. You may pass on any of your turns during the perform phase. Indicate you're passing by moving your avatar away from the stake into the fire. Ow, that sounds horrible. Yeah. No. Okay. When you pass, you are then completed with this phase. If you're unable to perform, you must pass. Now that when you pass, you're completed with the phase, it's the perform phase as a whole, you'll simply be skipped for the rest of your turns. I'm not sure I would have read that from the rules, but it makes sense that you couldn't just kind of delay your choices and come back in and do them, given the way the mechanisms work. And also, I confirmed that on the video thing. After you take any action in the perform phase, advance the turn marker so it's the top stake of the next martyr. After the martyr last in the turn takes an action, you move it back to the first. Once everybody's passed or is unable to perform, the perform phase is complete. Yeah, so it's pretty clear, I think. I didn't get that from, you know, reading ahead, because I never actually started doing any actions, because I came to one hell of an analysis paralysis when I started playing this. And we're going to hit that again, and I'm probably just going to start making random decisions, because it is so obfuscated. All right, we are going to stop there, and I'm going to go play me some Raid, because my batteries are low. Aside, you know, the modern Euro, this complex, obfuscated means of obtaining a victory point goal, is so antithetical to the original sort of old Euro style of creating very simple, clean designs, right? It feels almost as if there's a desire to create the kind of complexity that a war game has. And a war game's complexity emerges from the subject matter that it's trying to be, or a strong economic game or whatever, emerges from the complexity of the subject matter it's treating. and trying to abstract away and simplify that subject matter, as opposed to what these seem to be about, which is make it as hard as possible to figure out what the fuck you should be trying to do. You know, I really don't understand the appeal, and it feels like this attempt to create abstract games that have so many different twists and turns in terms of how you can accomplish your eventual victory point goal, and that the whole puzzle is figuring out how to do that at all effectively. And then once you do, there's probably an optimal strategy. Now, this one certainly has some player interaction in terms of these point scorings and whatever. But compare, this kind of player interaction to the simple auctions and whatnot that some of those early Euros had. And, you're looking at... Here you're looking at complexity for complexity's sake, as far as I can tell. Just, players have got tired of playing the games that were cleanly designed, to these messes. And these messes might be very appealing to, for example, people who play war games but aren't really into war. They're just into that additional complexity towards getting to that victory point level, without being, driven by concepts of good strategy or anything like that. Rather, they're just looking at it as a puzzle to be solved that's over a more complex manifold. And it is, to me, not understandable why anybody wants to do this. But, it's some people's type of thing. So once everybody passes, you go into this response phase. At this point, you're trying to figure out, well, for the most part, you're going to be moving around on here, but there's a few things that have to be done preliminary. First, you determine which doctrines are in play. If your face-up intention card matches any of the doctrine verses, you get to keep it face-up, and that'll allow you to keep playing over there. If your intention card does not match it, you flip it over and put it with the rest of your hand. Now, these guys have a little space on them, which will allow them to put these on them. We'll get to that in a bit. All right. Now, what it does not say here is the order of what's going on. My understanding from the video was more or less one person takes a turn and does, the first player takes their turn, does everything, I think, and then the next person takes a turn and gets to do everything. You can only claim a doctrine tile if the spirit marker is adjacent to it and the doctrine tile matches an intention card that you have in your player area, either your face-up one or a face-down one that has a spectator tile on it. If you chose the second option, to match an intention with a doctrine verse, you reveal your face-down intention card so that it now is face-up, and you move the spectator tile from the back of the intention card to your player area. So it doesn't get used up by this. Which means the only way to get rid of those tiles is by playing them on the doctrine, as far as I can see. If neither of these apply, you cannot claim a doctrine tile. Okay, great. But yeah, there's no sequence listed here. You claim the doctrine tile by removing it from the board and moving the spirit marker along the spirit path to the newly vacated space. Now, the rules as written are if the spirit marker is already sitting somewhere, it can grab something from an adjacent space. When you're in here, and we haven't seen this yet, but the video again made this clear. If it's not in the rules, it's, I don't know. But anyway, you can go to any of the ones that are adjacent to the center, directly bordering the center. Okay. Now, place all doctrine tiles you claim on the matching allegiance tile in your player area. That makes it sound like you can claim more than one in a single action. If you have people sitting on an intention card, or otherwise. Now, how do they get on these cards? Yeah, that's a good question. So far, you haven't been able to get them. I think that may be answered down here, but yeah, we don't know yet. Okay, if you do not have a matching allegiance tile, you put the doctrine tile in your player area. It won't count for anything until you get an allegiance tile. Refer to your Articles of Faith card to determine if you support or condemn the doctrine tile that you claimed. If your prayer cube is present on the doctrine's allegiance track, advance either support or condemned in that proper span for that stance of your doctrine. Neither support nor condemn can exceed the 9 position. I don't know why you want to refer to your Articles of Faith card, because the way this is stated, if you claim a doctrine that you don't have a marker on the track for, you can't advance the track until you've revealed it, I guess. Again, reading shit in, maybe? I don't know. But it certainly only says, if your prayer cube is present, advance the support or condemn. So I don't know why you care, why you'd be looking to see. You either already have one of these tiles. I think you get these tiles when you place, right? I don't know. It's so fucking pointless to me. It really is. Yeah, you claim the allegiance tile when you do a prayer, which to me means you've either declared, in which case you get to advance, or you haven't declared and you don't get to advance, and you're probably doing something stupid. I mean, you're not making it clear which direction you're heading in, so you might be sandbagging a little bit there. But on the other hand, you're foregoing your chance to play this, and you're not advancing the marker in any direction, which means you're foregoing a chance to up your ability to get in that. On the other hand, you are hiding where you're heading, so maybe that's got some value. It feels pretty difficult to make it worthwhile. But on the other hand, you might not have succeeded in claiming anything in the direction you're going. Are you only able to do the one? No, you can go without. You don't have to face your intention when you do prayer. Okay. What does the intention do? I don't know. I think it just allows you to pick these up. I think that's the only impact of the intention. Okay. All right. If you have not yet placed a prayer cube on the allegiance track for this doctrine, you will advance the support or condemn marker, the total number of spaces equal to your doctrine tiles, when you place your prayer cube. Okay. So you're not screwed, and actually it's helpful not to reveal, because then you can hold those tiles in reserve. Somebody knows you're operating in that doctrine, but whatever you're saying is so fucking obfuscated that they can't tell which side you're supporting when you actually make your prayer. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, sure, it is an abstract game, but what little sense and linkage you might find, I'm finding breaks any sense of reality as well. I wish these things weren't called anything. I wish this was just purely abstract, because it would make more sense to me, honestly, than what it does. Okay. Finally, you can claim a spectator tile if the spirit marker is adjacent to it, and if you have a sermon card in your player area. Now, the sermons are these guys, right? which you've bought in order to get a spectator tile. That's the only reason you're getting it. You claim the spectator tile from by removing it from the board and moving the spirit marker along the spirit path to the newly vacated space. Now again, it can only be done if it's adjacent in the standard cases. There's an exception, or a modification. Discard your sermon card face down at the bottom of the sermon deck and claim one of the breathe cubes from the sermon position of your player area. To your player area. Okay. So you had to pay 2 breathe cubes for this, but you get 1 back. So you're not in as bad a position the next turn for having played a piece for making a play that cost you 2 of your breathe cubes. Immediately select one of your intention cards from your hand and place it face down in your player area. This card can only be used in a future round, and you put the spectator on top of that in the little square for it. Hasten the Spirit. I, again, assume you can do any and all of these in any order when your turn comes up. Well, no, not in any order, because you can't use the spectator, you can't use the intention tile that you just created. But yeah, there doesn't seem to be any ordering here. And again, that wasn't clear in the video either. You may move the spirit, to me, I mean, I don't pay much attention to videos. I am much, much better at reading rules when they're, sensible. You may move the spirit marker so that it is adjacent to a tile when you hasten the spirit. You do this by placing 1 breathe cube on an unoccupied luminary in the hasten the spirit section of the board. There's 2 of these. Okay. All right. To advance the spirit marker into or over vacant spaces along the spirit path. It says spaces. You may advance the spirit marker either exactly 1 or 2 spaces as shown on the board. Yeah. So you're allowed to do this or this to get towards something you want to be next to. And you end on a space that is adjacent to at least 1 doctrine or spectator. Each martyr is allowed to hasten the spirit only once per round. No problem with this, because I think you get 1 turn per round in which you do all your stuff. Again, it's not spelled out that way, but it kind of is. After each martyr has had 1 turn or been unable to have a turn, the response phase is complete. But there's no statement of you get to do all these things or anything like that. Once they hasten the spirit, luminary spaces are both occupied. No more breath cubes may be placed there this round, so there's an advantage to going early. Breath cubes are, I don't know if you can control that terribly well. Maybe by use of these and clever passes, you can get some control over it, but that's definitely going to be beyond my ability at this point. Breath cubes are removed in the inhale and endure phase when both spaces are occupied. So cubes remain here until a turn in which both of them have been used, in which means there may only be 1 available when you're starting your turn. Okay. The inhale and endure phase, which is really a prep phase. For every unoccupied luminary in the dashed box of the prayer section, so there's room for 8 guys there, you permanently remove 1 breathe cube from the game by discarding breathe cubes from the board and from the cards. Now, it is quite possible that somebody could leave all of these empty and really maybe nobody does anything and there wouldn't be enough cubes to remove. I don't think it handles that case, but it does say remove from the board and from the cards, A. Okay, so this was something that I hated in the setup section, but there's letters there. I don't know if these are where it applies. Okay, these are the cards, I think. But there's no A next to these. A is next to The turn tracker on the top of the leftmost stake. So this is the only place I saw this A before, and I'm not seeing it here at all. I couldn't figure out why there were letters here, and I thought maybe they were referred to later in the rules, but if they are, they're not aligned correctly, and they're not aligned here. I mean, this whole thing is just such a mess. I mean, I'm looking, would there be an A here? There doesn't seem to be. There's a 1. Is there any cards? No. All right, whatever. Remove from Hasten the Spirit last. If there are not enough... Okay, so you would remove from Hasten the Spirit if there's only 1 there, I guess, at this point. Right? Is that where it says? Now see, here it says only if both spaces are occupied. Don't know what that means. So my feeling is the intention here is that you do remove from here no matter what if cubes are meant to be removed, but because remove is going to be used again for something else. But that would then affect whether or not they get reloaded later, the other kind of removing. We'll see. We'll see. Maybe remove is only used in this context, in which case, very oddly, the only impact of there only being 1 here is that you can't remove from it when there's only 1 here, which means if there's 2 there, you can remove from the game, and then there would be 1, and I don't know because it's up here. It seems to imply that you would then not be able to remove the second one. But let's keep going. If we can figure any of this out. If there are not enough breath cubes on the board and or cards to fulfill this, use as many available on the boards and our cards. Do not take breath cards from the players, cubes from the players. Discard any spectator tiles on the hymn cards from the game. So this is the way you get rid of those 10-point penalties that you get by taking these, which appear to have multiple values. Like 1, they allow you an opportunity at these. However, well, let's see if they come off there. I don't know. Collect any remaining expended breath cubes from the luminary spaces on the board and our cards. Only collect from Hasten the Spirit if the 2 breath cubes are there. Okay, so this is supportive of how I was talking about it, that instead of remove, which is said here and applies directly to the use of the word remove here, collect is used here. But I still think that that's the intention, is that these are free to be removed last from the game, and that the remove up here doesn't apply to that removal, and that instead it applies to you do not collect, because there is a specific exemption against collecting. If you took it at face value, using the words, because they chose 2 separate words there, it's kind of unambiguous that you can remove 1 from here, but not if there's 2, but not the second from the game. And if there's only 1 there, it cannot be removed from the game, which is, again, I don't believe that's the intention. So I'm going to play it by the intention, not by the written rules. But all the clues seem to line, all the clues and knowledge of games and whatnot seem to align with, what I'm trying to say there. Okay, even if the rules don't, if read textually. Okay. Beginning with the Martyr at the end of the current turn order, distribute the breath cubes to each Martyr's player area 1 at a time in a reverse turn order. Do this until there are no breath clues remaining to distribute. And this gets, here we go. A, the prayer blocker counts as occupying a luminary space. I don't know what the fuck that is. So that would align from the cards. The prayer blocker. I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. B, advance the prayer blocker down to the next. Okay, what is the prayer blocker? Is that a thing? All right, so I wish I hadn't read that because now it's bringing something into play that I've never heard of. Oh, this is the two-player game. Okay, so I don't know that these letters have anything to do with any of this. Just like the earlier letters, the difference is they do seem to align in numbers. Is there a set of letters down here? Yes, there is. Okay, so I guess these letters have something to do with the two-player game, which I have not read any rules for. So I will just ignore letters, which makes me happier because that seemed to be what I was supposed to do because they didn't align with other things. All right, but if it's only a two-player game, that's great. I don't know what the prayer blocker is, though. Guess it was defined somewhere. Okay. Move all avatars up. So they'll all have been in the pass position by this point. They all move back up to their stake so that they can burn more comfortably instead of being right on the fire. Move the turn tracker so that it's at the top of the stake above the first martyr's avatar. 3. Okay, so that looks like it resets the turn marker to the beginning of the set. Now the first, that's what's intended. It's a bad wording because the first player is the one that the marker's on top of, I think, as opposed to all the way to the left, which would make more sense. But again, I think we've got the intention there. Discard all sermon cards remaining in any player areas and place them face down at the bottom of the sermon deck. We'll put them beside. So, well, it says face down, which means you don't reshuffle. You just constantly, and the same with the hymn deck, you just constantly recycle if the game goes that long. Place the remaining, which is important. Because, first of all, we have to know what order to remove them from here, but because it means that this is kind of like Civilization, where the ordering of the cards as they were turned in is important as to the order they're going to come out in later. Now, I've never seen anybody play this way other than me, but it is of importance in Civilization. I mean, it is of importance in Civilization because it means that things will clump together. Your hides and ochre in the base game. When you're playing with the advanced expanded trade set, which is a terrible idea, but when you're playing with that, those also will clump together. That'll open up more opportunities for deals, although less opportunity for you to randomly kind of collect stuff, I think. Total aside there. All right, we're going to swap batteries, but we might as well talk about something enjoyable instead of this. Okay. So there we are. We discard the sermons. Place the remaining face-up hymn and sermon cards face down at the bottom of their decks. It really should tell me the order that this is done in, as with from the players. If you're doing something like this, the order becomes absolutely imperative, right? Because it's something everybody should be kind of tracking and remembering. It might be of importance. Return all your face-up intention cards to your hand of unplayed intention cards. So what it doesn't say is, I believe, it doesn't say anything about if you're in this position. I believe you're stuck there if that's the case. Not clear. Okay. Okay. Now, when does the game end? If you and or any other martyrs have no breath cubes after they've been distributed, then we go to the end of the game. Somebody died, so we're all going to give up on whatever we're doing. Again, makes sense. For each doctrine, verify you've met all 3 requirements. That you have a doctrine tile? No. That you have a doctrine tile, that you have an allegiance tile that matches that doctrine tile, and that the support or condemn marker for that doctrine is past your prayer cube that you put there. This is, again, there's this weird balancing. The first person to claim these gets a big bonus. if they have at least one doctrine tile on that. And the further that you've picked these, the further you have to have driven the marker on your particular side, which means that, you know, once you've declared that you want the big points, other people are probably hesitant to grab the markers for that, because those markers will help advance this thing and make your card worth its full value. Here's the difference, though. If I'm at 6 and I've picked 3, I'm worth 18. And if you only picked 1 to get it to 9 and didn't get any others, you're only worth 9. So there is some balance to that. You know, there's some capability for working together. Anyway, also the support or condemn marker has to be past your prayer, has to be at your prayer cube or past. If you don't meet all of these, you get nothing for that doctrine. For each qualifying doctrine, you multiply the number of tiles that you have in that doctrine times the allegiance level of your prayer cube. Beep, 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 beep. You add whatever points are on the allegiance tile, and then you lose 10, and this is apparently for each doctrine, for each of your unfulfilled spectators, which is spectators remaining either on one of your face-down intention cards or in your player area waiting with a hymn, waiting to assist with a hymn action. So those guys are really dangerous. They could wipe out all your points, you know, because one of them is minus 10 off every fucking doctrine. Ouch. Whoever has the most points wins. Ties are broken by whoever receives the most points from the doctrine of church authority, then from the state-controlled church, then from the just war, finally from swearing of oaths. If somehow there's still a tie, the player who is least entertained, and that'll be me, loses. Doesn't tell you who wins. One person loses. You know what? I think that person loses every time. And that could probably be a tie if people are like me. A couple of special cases here. At the end of the intention phase, if no face-up intention cards match the doctrine tiles that the spirit marker can access, and no one has any face-down intention cards with spectator tiles, you redo the intention phase. Okay. Which is to say, if on the first phase of a turn, everybody chooses stuff that means nothing will get selected. Nothing obvious will get selected. But here's the thing. There's nothing that prevents you, from what I can tell, because it doesn't seem like order is an issue in it, from being able to clear one of these and open up an opportunity there. So it's not like a prevent. It's a weird rule. I don't know why it's there, because it's quite possible that you could have an opportunity to get to something and to kick off things so that everybody can get stuff, even if you fulfill those chances. And it's also quite possible, since this prevents this rule from taking effect, that you picked something else that couldn't be reached, and that you've short-circuited it in a way that the rule should have applied to prevent something horrible from happening, but doesn't. Now, it's not that horrible, but it would be a turn where nobody collects anything. At the beginning of the perform phase, if no face-up intention cards match any doctrine verse, is that possible? I thought all 4 verses are here. And no martyr has a sermon card, and no martyr has a face-down intention card they want to play. How do you know they want to? Then proceed directly to the, oh, okay. So they have the right to object. And this is no big deal at all. If you have a face-down intention card, presumably already with an observer or a viewer, whatever the fuck they are. Audience, I don't remember what they're fucking called. Spectators, that's it. Equally, equal meaning. I assume it's one with a spectator on it, but this is the beginning of the perform phase. Whoa. So the perform phase is where you get to do everything. Hold on, what's up with this? At the beginning of the perform phase, if there's no face-up intention cards that match any doctrine verse. Well, I don't think that's possible. Unless these don't all... we'll have to see. These have four different verses on it. So that would be impossible. I think these are the doctrine verses, not these. No Martyr has any, I don't know. And then we have some historical context, which, you know, doesn't really do you any good. It's not like, it really doesn't help you understand why the design is the way it is, because there's no reason for the design to be the way it is. It's an abstract game with it's an incredibly obfuscated abstract game with some kind of layer to, I don't know. I mean, I can't even imagine. Why make it this? You know, the excitement for me was the idea of like people throwing rotten tomatoes and stuff like that. I had this view of like some kind of humorous take on burning people at the stake, or some kind of serious take as to how long it takes, you know. Oh, look, it's the fat guy. He's going to burn faster or slower, and maybe you bet on it or something. I don't know. Yeah, that's not humorous, by the way. That's a serious look at what might happen. No, I have no idea. But I agreed to do this, so play it we will. And up this goes.